So, Glenn, thank you so much for joining me today. I'd like to talk to you about your new film, which is out for streaming tomorrow,
Mm.
Penitentia, which sounds like a really in-depth journey of trying to choose the right path in life and decisions regarding what to do. Can you tell me what it was like to explore these for the role that you play in Ali?
It, it was jumping into this role, especially this was my first time getting to lead a feature film, and I couldn't have asked for a more exciting opportunity, I feel, as far as like the depth of a character, the depth of a story. Um, and Ale being in sort of like this world that wasn't built for him, having to operate and find his way. I relate to growing up as like one of two brown kids in my graduating class in high school and all of that. Like there was a lot of parallels that I got to bring over. But the story itself was really powerful. And I'm just excited to be able to share it, to be able to be able to have your first lead be a film that you feel is important and a like a well-crafted story, and getting to share the screen with so many tremendous actors, from Kate to Natasha and of course like Rusty Schwimmer, just an incredible cast.
So, did you feel, because you related so much to the role, did you feel that even right down to the character growth of Ale, that you really connected with that, the journey that he takes to becoming a lawyer? Obviously, I know that you're an actor, but still, did you find those parallels even in that journey of his character?
Very much so. Very much so. There were the especially as I like as we were getting ready to like ramp up to film to shoot the film. I reached out to Chris and I was like, Chris, I really feel like Ale is somebody that does a lot of code switching, and I was like, because I was like, I can tell you from experience, I'm like, it's very different the way that I speak when I'm in the barbershop, or if I'm at like a powwow, or if I am walking into a room full of execs. I was like, it's just a very different vernacular. And I was like, would you be okay with me taking a little bit of freedom in some of those moments when it's me and my old friend who was my cellmate, when I was wrongfully convicted as a kid? Because those are those moments where like the tie gets loosened and the business walls sort of fade away, and it's just two guys that have been inside for a while. And so we really found a lot of places to really put my personal life into Ale, and it wasn't a big stretch or a big reach.
Well, what would you say out of all of those experiences that you've had was your biggest inspiration to put then into the character? I know you mentioned a few there, but what was the one that inspired you the most?
Um, a very bittersweet one. Um, uh, my character carries scars on his wrists from an attempted suicide, and I believe it was the second week of filming Penitentia. I lost a good friend of mine to suicide,
Sorry
and
to
I
hear
got
that.
that text on set. And Chris actually kind of caught me because my knees kind of gave out when I got the text, and he pulled me into a room, and we talked about it for a little bit. And he was ready to shut the set down, and we were already behind. This is I will run through a wall for Chris. Like that man, you can't ask for a better human being directing. Um, and and he said, "Do you want me to shut this down?" And my friend who I lost was an artist, and an unbelievable one. And I knew she would have been furious with me if I'd have said, "Yeah, let's. I need to go home." Um, and we powered through, but I feel like this film for me, that she is as much of a star of this film as I am, because of the fact that it grounded me so much. And in a way it was like it was sort of like this uh proactive grieving, like this there was a place to put it, where I could feel close to her while also processing this loss. But it got real close to home, but I'm grateful for it. And I think because of that, it forced me to be that much more honest in my work, because I wasn't trying to make something up. It was just coming from this stuff that I was dealing with in the moment. And the crew also that were incredible in the way that they just gave me space, because I wanted to make sure everybody on set knew what I was dealing with. So if there was any weird sort of energy coming off me, they knew it had nothing to do with them. And they were so gracious and took care of me and really carried me through the whole process of filming this movie. So yeah, that was definitely the closest parallel that was unexpected, but it was a really delicate dance, really, to do it. But I think the work, also my understanding of grief, it was this thing where life and art just became hand in hand and walked together.
Yeah, it's really sorry. I'm so sorry to hear that first off, and what a tragic incident to happen. But to hear that the crew and the cast supported you and you could use that to kind of fuel your energy, and as you said, it grounded you. That's a really beautiful story. So obviously that probably makes the film so much more personal to you, and to hold
Hmm.
that memory of, that day you found out. So I'm so sorry to hear that, but I'm glad to hear that you managed to power on through for the movie and everyone rallied around you. It's amazing and very inspiring as well, because so many people struggle with that and have that happen in their lives. To hear it happen to someone, it's really sad. But I'm glad to hear that the film got made, and I hope that she's, looking down very proud of what you've created.
Yeah.
So of course, inspirations for yourself, and as you said, Chris is an amazing man, and he obviously directed the film. This had really personal connections to him as well, obviously, with the serious subjects of social justice, civil rights, fighting for power that can be abused at times. Do you think that his father inspiring so much of this film added to the pressures of you going on set? Did you feel like you also owed him something, or did you just use that, much like your friend, to fuel you getting through the rest of the shoot?
I think it was I think it was more focus that it brought than pressure, because I mean Chris was just so open and just so collaborative and so giving and generous through the process that I never felt like I was getting pressure heaped on me necessarily. But there, as he talked to me about his father, and he told some of these stories about cases and just who his father was, there was this really beautiful trust, that we kind of felt like. I mean, I had to trust him by being so vulnerable, because this character is the most complex one that I've played, and there's so much vulnerability that at most of his life he has to hide. And so I had to trust him, especially going through what I was going through, to be completely vulnerable. And then he had to trust me with this very important work. And I think that's part of why we bonded as much as we did throughout the process, is that is we were able to just have this trust. And we both gave each other something to hold on to during the process. And then what was really incredible, when we moved the shoot to Wichita, Kansas, which is where Chris grew up. That's where his father served as a civil rights attorney throughout his career. The amount of lawyers and judges that we met during the filming of this process that would just come up and like hug him, because they knew Chris when he was just running around the courtroom when he was like 4 or 5 years old, and some of the stories that they had, and the reverence that they carried for his father. I understood so clearly where all this script came from, because I just saw the magnitude of this man and the legacy that he left with all the people that were still involved. Was really, again, something else that was really grounding. It brought it out of the all of the little clouds and ethereal nature that we try to put on making movies and TV shows and everything. And it was like, this is something that's very important. It's real, it's heart. And these people, the real people that have lived through it, being on set, just reminds you of that. And it reminds you that you're not just playing pretend, that you are telling a story that is. I heard somebody say that acting is the art of lying as honestly as you can. And I feel like that's a good way to go about it. You know, it's like I may not have lived Ale's experience, but like I've lived enough similar ones that I can empathize with the rest and try to make up that difference. But then having the people that have really been there uh, in those trenches, there's something that just calms you down because you just hear them talk about it, and then you're not just playing guessing games anymore. You can just sort of sink into a truth.
Yeah, I bet that must have been such a full circle moment for Chris as well, having all these people that he knew as a kid, then all of a sudden be on the set of this film that's going on. That must have been really just amazing for everyone to see, as you said. So obviously it's gone into the film festival circuit now and
Mm.
it's had various accolades. How proud has that made you feel? Obviously, as you said, it's your first lead in a feature film. What's been your reaction to the reactions?
um, I think mostly gratitude. You know, there's so much you just don't know and you can't control, and you feel like you found something, and you dig so deep and you give everything that you have available to you, and you just hope it hits the right note, you hope it hits the right tone, and you hope it lands with somebody. Like, you know, I mean, that's why I am an artist. Is I've never wanted to, I never came into this trying to be famous. I came into this because I've always been a storyteller, and I want to be able to make people not feel alone. And so when I hear people react to it from an emotional place, that's the most important thing to me. And being able to sit in a theater, because most actors, we have a hard time watching our own work. Like, we have a hard time looking at that screen and seeing this face on a large screen. I'm like, the mirror is already enough. I don't need this. But being able to be in a room, like when we screened at the Tallgrass Festival, which is an unbelievable film festival, the staff that runs that, and the way that that city pulls together for it is incredible. But when we watched it at Tallgrass, I think we had almost 500 people come to see the film when it premiered there, and sitting in a room and being able to just sort of like look around a little bit and see people so in the story, see people kind of, you know, holding in emotions or wiping away tears, and the laughter in the moments that they were there. Like, that's what's special, because it's like, you know, when we're filming it, that's for us. Like, we're doing this thing, but then once it's done, we release it for everybody else to just ingest and do with what they will. And so it's been really, really wonderful being able to get that. And then also, you know, getting nominated for awards is also just this wonderful, like, people recognize that you worked hard, you know, and that's also nice. But being able to share it with people in the theater and actually see them experience it, and that is the most honest kind of response I think that you can get.
Yeah, I can imagine just the energy in that room when you were watching it. It must have been also quite nerve-wracking beforehand, I guess, if
Oh
you
yeah,
don't really know
terrified.
what's going to happen. But I think that's such an amazing response, and it's something that me as a viewer, I definitely relate to a lot, especially with, you know, wanting to escape. As you said, you watch something because you want to get into that world, you want to get into the story, and it's artists like yourself that really help bring that story to life. And that kind of leads me into my concluding question, which I have to talk to you about, is obviously your time as Frost on The Walking Dead. Honestly, season 11 was my personally favorite season, and
Oh,
the every single character and every single actor in that show really brought the story to life. But I have to say, your scenes, oh my goodness, I was so engrossed in the story that it was really not frustrating to see how Daryl reacted to Frost, because I know why
mhm.
he was doing it, but you just had us completely just I just again I'm speechless. The way that you portrayed Frost in the show was just incredible, and I just want to say thank you from all the fans,
Oh,
especially in those last few moments that he had. It was so intense, and it must have been really hard to channel into that. But how did it feel working on something as massive as The Walking Dead?
special. You know, anytime you're coming in as the new guy, you know, into a show, you're always the new kid in school. But, you know, this was my first time stepping into a show that had that global magnetism that it had, and it had been run like such a. I mean, I remember when I started watching Walking Dead, I was doing Shakespeare at Utah Shakespeare Festival. Broke theater actor, just no money. I'm like trying to scrounge together cash just to buy my girlfriend an engagement ring at the time. I mean, it was just falling in love with it in that circumstance. If you'd have told me while I was sitting in this tiny little apartment in Utah that I was going to be on this show and get to like contribute to the story, probably wouldn't have believed you. And then when I got the job, I was like, I have no idea what this energy is going to be like going on the set. And I got there, and it was just the most inviting people, like especially for something that big. You just don't expect it to be so familial, so warm, and so inviting. And I mean, Lauren Cohen and I very quickly became buddies, just talking about our dogs and sharing pictures with each other on our phones, just geeking out in that way. And then to be able to really finish it with that, with that last episode, um, was such a great challenge because I love anything that scares me. Like for me, I fully believe that you should do at least two things that scare you. Like just yesterday, I competed in my first jujitsu tournament. Like I'm
Wow,
weird. I always want to do things that are terrifying, and so
amazing.
to do this torture scene and to try to find that balance of the fear of death, but the absolution of brotherhood and like the protecting and trying to ride that line and still getting to be like a little bit of a badass like that doesn't hurt like that's so much fun. And Daryl and I before we shot that scene, um Daryl Norman and I before we shot that scene, we talked outside, and he looks at me and he goes, Glenn, man, I'm wondering how we're gonna like, really tell this story. Like, there's so much that's not being said. Like underneath all the things that we are saying. I was like, that's been my fear this whole time, Norm. Like I guess we'll figure it out. He's like, yeah, we'll give it a swing and we'll see how it goes. And I think it was like the second take. We just kind of looked at each other and he's like, I think we're there. And I was like, yeah, I think we are. And then we lived in it for that was a long day. I think we did that torture scene. I think we had about 45 takes, something like that.
Wow.
It was definitely the most tired I've ever been at the end of like filming at that point. Just emotionally drained, physically drained, finding bruises on my legs from like pushing against that chair, things like that
No.
that you're not even thinking about because it becomes so real in the moment. But it was such a fun challenge, and it's not so often that you're on something that big that you can really let your hair down and know that everyone's going to just take care of you.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I have to say I've never worked on a project where the fans were so incredibly like inviting, welcoming, cordial. Brazil, like I've found so many new fans in Brazil that are just so near and dear to my heart. But just this show in general, I was really overwhelmed by the positive joy and like for me, it's always really special when because to me it's like when everybody's coming to me on getting to me on social media and like all of this, for me it's really the way that I always take it is there's this form of gratitude, and like it has nothing to do with me necessarily. It is that I happen to be a part of this thing that they love, and they've respected the moments that I have lived in this space, this thing that they love. And so I'm this sort of just like conduit of this. They can't just like reach out to the show and put their arms around a show, but so they do it to us, and I'm so appreciative of that. And I'll never forget the experience of being part of the Walking Dead family.
Us fans, honestly, again, will never forget Frost as a character. You did such an amazing job. I'll say it again, and I had no idea that it was 45 takes. That's insane. It's such an intense scene. That must have been really, really difficult. But the end result was incredible. And it's one of the biggest points of season 11. And as you said, it really showed Frost's loyalty, which was an amazing thing. At the end of the day, the show was more about family than zombies, and
Yes.
seeing the way that you seen Maggie as family. was just incredible. So I'm really pleased that that introduced so many fans like me to your work. I'm so excited to catch this movie tomorrow when it starts streaming. I will
Thank you.
include all of the links below for people to watch that. And I just want
Awesome.
to say one final thank you, Glenn, for speaking to me today.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much, and thank you to the fans. You guys are incredible, and I hope you enjoy Penitentia.